Hey everybody, welcome to the Biz STL podcast. I'm your host, Mike Miller. The Biz STL podcast is where we meet with leaders from around St. Louis to learn more about how they built their businesses, what they see for the future of St. Louis's business scene, and how some of their greatest lessons might just serve as learning opportunities for your own career. This episode of the Biz STL podcast is presented by It's Alive Automotive. When you think about the companies that feel fundamentally St. Louis, which ones come to mind? There are admittedly lots of choices spanning all sorts of sectors, everything from pet food to antacid, you name it, and it probably has a presence here in the region. On today's episode, we're joined by the leader of one of those quintessential St. Louis companies, Stifel CEO Ron Kruszewski. At this point, it feels like the Stifel brand is everywhere you look in St. Louis. You see it on the Cardinals and Blues jerseys, on the facade of the old Opera House, and even atop the downtown skyline. Did you know Stifel's roots in St. Louis go all the way back to 1890? So yeah, I think they're about as St. Louis as they come. So many of the transformational changes Stifel has experienced over the past few decades can be tied directly to the leadership of Ron Kruszewski. Ron joined Stifel in 1997 as president and CEO and has navigated the company through dozens of bull and bear markets to solidify its status as a financial institution in the Midwest and beyond. So how has he done it? What does he see for the future of St. Louis? Which local leaders does Ron admire? Let's lean in and learn a little more. Today's guest is Stifel CEO Ron Kruszewski, someone who needs little introduction for anyone who's in tune with the St. Louis business scene, or really the financial sector across the U.S. at large. Ron, it's great to have you with us here today.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
There's so much I'm eager to chat with you about today, but I want to do something that we do with all of our guests. We like to get to know folks a little bit beyond their work here in St. Louis and ask you a few rapid-fire questions. You can answer them in just a few brief words, really whatever feels right to you. Sound good?
Fair enough. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, how about this? Monday through Friday, you're waking up. How do you start your day? What is one of the first things you do?
Well, I should start by saying that I would like to think that my work week was Monday through Friday. All right. And anyone that knows me knows that that's not true. So I should say Monday through Sunday. And maybe I take a little time on Sunday to watch some football or something. But I'm a person that doesn't need a lot of sleep. So I tend to go to bed about 1 and wake up about 7. And it's really the same thing. I work out a little bit, take a steam, have a coffee. I like to get to the office a little bit later because I stay up later. And that's just the routine. Nothing too intense.
I know you're a golfer too. If you're trying to figure out your ideal foursome, and you could pick anyone living or from history, who's playing with you?
Wait, from history?
Anyone. You can go back as far as you want.
When I get asked that question, who you'd like to meet, the most influential person, I must say it would be Jesus, but I don't think Jesus played golf. So I would really like to play golf with Thomas Jefferson. I'd put on my foursome, right? From politicians, as a golfer, Jack Nicklaus would be fabulous. I'd have to think about third there. That's pretty tall cotton right there.
That's a good start. Yeah, for sure. Well, what's something that folks may not know about you?
I would think that most people think that I'm an extrovert. They'll see me with a mic and they'll see me at various events, and I pick up the mic and have no problem talking on television, no problem. But I'm more of an introvert. The people that know me well will say, you're much more quiet than I appear.
How about favorite book? Anything that you're reading currently, or any book that is must read on your shelf?
Yeah, there's two books that are interesting. One is The End is Just the Beginning. I have that backwards, and it talks about what's going on in the world and effectively the change in the world order since 1945. And currently, it's very interesting to that perspective to what's happening in the world today with Russia, in Ukraine, China, Iran, all of the countries that are really trying to upset the world order. And another book is Outlive, which really talks about how you can do certain things to increase longevity. I think everyone's interested in that.
Yeah, no doubt. Are you a podcast guy, or is there anything that is a must listen in your podcast?
I'm not much of a podcast. I still read. To go back to what I do in the morning, I love newspapers. I like the Wall Street Journal in paper form. So I'm a little old school when it comes to that.
Yeah, I love to hear that. That's great. What about a favorite life hack? Is there anything that you do to maybe make your life easier? Anything that you figured out along the line?
It is. It's another book that you can read, but if you really think about do not sweat the small stuff, that really can help your entire perspective on life. There are so many things. The old saying that, what life is, it's 10% of what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So don't overreact to things. Just most people, mean well, even though you may misinterpret that. So what I find is when I start to get stressed, I'll just tell myself not to sweat the small stuff. It works every time.
Well, that's great advice. We're going to get into some more advice there, but I think I could use that advice in my own life too. That's great. Hang tight. We'll be right back. It's Alive Automotive brings cars back to life. Specializing in classic Jaguars, It's Alive Automotive buys, sells, repairs, and restores all kinds of classic sports cars. Every tool and piece of equipment is carefully selected to breathe life back into cars, ensuring they will last for generations to come. From diagnostics to nut and bolt restorations, It's Alive Automotive's state-of-the-art facilities aren't just a place for restoration, they're a ground for innovation, where they push the boundaries and take on projects that others can only dream of. Witness the transformation of classic cars at itsaliveauto.com and see how the team's unparalleled craftsmanship and passion get automotive legends back on the road. Welcome back to the Biz STL podcast. Well, let's talk business. Let's get down right to it. Stifel has obviously seen some tremendous growth over the last several decades, ever since you took over, growing organically. You've been through several acquisitions. You acquired your own bank. All the while, I think you guys have really tried to maintain what I think you could call an intense focus on your clients. As you look back at your time at Stifel, leading the organization, are there lessons that you've learned? Anything that's allowed you to help Stifel undergo this really rich transformation? Any lessons that you think could maybe apply to people who lead their own companies, whatever size, whatever sector?
Yeah, well, the best advice I ever received, which has helped me in business, was from my mom. And she told me at a very young age, the golden rule. All right, just treat people as you would like to be treated. And if you apply that not only in your personal life, but in your business life, it pays tremendous dividends. So what I have learned at Stifel, I became CEO in 1997. That's almost 27 years ago. And Stifel was a small company, 100 million in revenue. We've got to almost 5 billion in revenue today, 700 associates, I'd like to say, almost 10,000. And what it is that to grow a company, you need to lead by letting people be the best they can be. You don't put undue pressure or undue bureaucracy on people. And so Stifel, our growth is directly attributable to the people that work there. And I've learned that I get a lot of credit for being CEO, but I stand on the shoulders of 10,000 people who are very good at what they do. And when you recognize that, you recognize it isn't about you, then that pays dividends.
You mentioned your mother right there. Are there folks that you've learned from even in your own career who maybe pass along some wisdom along the lines of the golden rule? Anything that you've picked up from folks during your own career that you now apply, day in, day out at Stifel?
Well, from my mentor was a gentleman by the name of Fred Kasten, who I spent, before I came to Stifel, I worked for Fred, who's passed away today, so God rest his soul. But he was a tremendous mentor to me and taught me, again, to treat people right. It's not about how smart you are. When you come to me after you've been at Stifel for a year, I won't know what school you went to. I won't know what your grade point average is. I won't even know what your IQ is. What I will know is whether you're a good team player and whether you get along and treat people right. And that's what Fred taught me, and that's what I try to teach people today.
Were there any anecdotes from Fred that maybe you could share with us as far as, this was a specific situation where, Fred maybe pulled me aside, or Fred maybe gave me this great lesson or this great wisdom that really propelled me forward?
Well, yeah, I remember a time I was the kind of young man who could get most things done. Okay, unfortunately, it would be like playing football. I would tackle my own teammates. All right, and so I'd get things done, but I'd look back and the carnage on the field would be very, very extensive. And Fred pulled me in one particular case. We were doing a big conversion back in the 90s, an IT conversion, and we got it done, but I really trampled over a lot of people. And I remember him pulling me aside and saying, look, it isn't just necessarily getting to the finish line, it's how you get there. And it's very important to just not get there right. And I'll never forget that.
It feels like maybe learning and developing soft skills, social, emotional skills that maybe can deal with people, understand people on a different level too, is probably along those lines too of what helped you there.
Another great book, EQ.
Mhm.
It's your emotional intelligence that I try to tell people. We can measure IQ, but EQ, your ability to relate to people, your ability to just understand cues and do that, it's so important in any business.
Yeah,
In
no
fact, in any relationship.
No doubt. Absolutely. It feels like, Stifel, we talked about the growth that the company has undergone over the last several decades, but you've also been a real proponent of downtown in St. Louis specifically. You've invested in your headquarters there. All your philanthropic initiatives that you guys have been a part of, sponsoring the former Opera House, sponsoring Cardinals and Blues. You guys have really believed in St. Louis, invested in St. Louis. Why has that been important? All of that investment, why has that been so important for Stifel?
Well, first of all, Stifel, remember, was founded in 1890 on Broadway in downtown St. Louis. And when I moved here, and I moved here in 97, I had the thought that any community or any city needs to have a strong urban core. Otherwise, you know what, you don't want to just live in a suburb, certainly not to attract people here. So we have been a proponent for downtown. I've had many opportunities to move from downtown, and we've said no because we want to and we believe in downtown. We own our building on Broadway and Washington.
Stuff like that matters. It matters both to the business scene, I think, to the community at large when we have, that type of corporate citizenry, businesses investing in St. Louis, investing in the region at large. When you look at downtown specifically, obviously it's gone through a number of changes over the years, specifically over the last 4 or 5 years since the pandemic. How do you sort of take the temperature of the health of downtown St. Louis? I know there's a lot of initiatives in the work to really reinvigorate the downtown core. As you maybe look into the future, what is the future of downtown St. Louis? How do we make the most of it in the years to come?
Well, first of all, the future has to be bright. Okay, that's my view on everything is you have to be optimistic about the future. And so I don't like to think about a city in decline. However, in many ways, downtown St. Louis, by a lot of measures, has been in decline. And I'm encouraged by the investment that's occurring now. I think of Bob O'Loughlin putting in, the aquarium and all the investments that he's made in Union Station. Obviously, the Cardinals and what they've done. They built a stadium in downtown St. Louis. You have the Taylor family bringing soccer. All of those things are important, but what we really need to do is to make downtown safe so that people who live in the suburbs are comfortable coming downtown for a good meal and for just some fun things to do. And on that front, we have a little bit of work to do.
But you're optimistic?
I'm always optimistic. All right. I believe that St. Louis at its core has so many attributes. It is a big, small town and versus a small, big town. And when you think about living in St. Louis and being able to do and go to, like you said, the Opera House, the Cardinals, the Blues, see soccer, go to some of the great art museums, the City Museum, all of these great things that St. Louis has, let's look at the potential. However, what I would say to the listeners is that everyone has to support investing in downtown, investing in our community. We need to invest in our airport. We need to invest in our people. We need to invest in the community. And that will take a great city and make it even greater.
Zooming out a bit and looking at the region from a financial lens, it feels like St. Louis is a little bit of a financial services hub. There are a lot of organizations in the finance sector that have a presence here, obviously Stifel included. How does St. Louis benefit, perhaps, from having so many established organizations, companies in the finance sector with a presence here in St. Louis?
I would say it's the opposite. We benefit from the workforce in St. Louis. And many people don't know this, but back, I would say in the 60s, the number two city to New York in terms of financial services, investment banking, and brokerage was St. Louis. So today you have some great companies. You have Edward Jones, you have Wells Fargo Advisors, you have Stifel, you even have Benjamin F. Edwards, from the Edwards family. And what that is a very, very experienced workforce, people that understand our business. And so there's a huge advantage to running a financial services firm like Stifel in St. Louis, for sure.
As you look around the region, are there leaders that you look to for inspiration? Are there leaders that you look at and, wow, they're doing a great job, or wow, I wish I could do something like they're doing?
Well, absolutely. They're friends and in some cases competitors. I think of Jim Kavanaugh at Worldwide, who's done a phenomenal job. His partner as well, Dave Stewart. They have really built a phenomenal business, and I really respect what they've done. You have people that I met when I first got here, people like Bob Clark. I mentioned Bob O'Loughlin, the DeWitt family are all people that in various businesses are people that I respect. Obviously, a competitor, but a great business is Commerce Bank and the Kemper family. They're just rock bed foundation of St. Louis, and I have a lot of respect for people.
Those are big names, I think names that would resonate with any listener, any reader. What about under the surface? Are there folks who maybe don't get enough credit, folks who are doing great work, folks who maybe are a little under the radar, but are still doing great things and really shaping the future of St. Louis?
I'm going to duck that question because I'm trying to, if I say anyone that's under the radar, they're going to say, how could you say that I was under the radar? All right. But there are, let me answer that question by mentioning one other name that I think was very supportive of St. Louis. That was Michael Neidorff. Okay. Former CEO, who's now passed. His investment and his dedication to St. Louis was extraordinary. And I think it's important to remember the people, even though they're not doing it today, what he did and his vision and his philanthropy was phenomenal.
Yeah, a lot of people who have had a hand in shaping the way the region looks today, and certainly the way the region's going to look 10, 20 years from now. And certainly you could look to any number of sectors, any number of people. There's a lot of people you could probably pull some sort of inspiration from around St. Louis, no doubt about it. Ron, we're just a couple months into the new year. As you look ahead into 2024, are there any trends in your industry that you're particularly eyeing, one or two things that could really shape the financial services industry in the years to come?
Well, the financial services industry, banks and investment banks and wealth managers like Stifel are in a year of transition. What we have to remember, and we see it in inflation, we see it in a lot of things that are impacting day-to-day lives, not just my business, and that is with the amount of money that was put in the economy because of the pandemic. I always tell the story that when people get floored by the fact that when I will ask what we spent in today's dollars in World War II, in both theaters, both the Pacific and in Europe, and the Marshall Plan, which completely rebuilt Europe, that was about $4 trillion in today's dollars. And we spent nearly $6 trillion in the pandemic. And that is an extraordinary amount of money that was put into the economy that it feels good at the time, but there's consequences. Has been pretty high inflation. Every business is working through that.
Any other trends that you have your eye on moving forward in 2024?
Well, without question, everyone's talking about AI, okay, and the impact of AI. What I would say to your listeners is that, history has a way of repeating itself. So when I got out of school, it was 1981. The inflation rate was 12%, unemployment was 12%, interest rates were 15%. It was a crazy time to get into business. The thing then that was new was the computer, the IBM computer. And I got ahead in business by being very proficient at the computer as a young person. That's true today. So the young people that are coming into business today should be proficient at large language models and AI. And I tell everyone, whether you're young or been in business for, in my case, 40 years, that you will not lose your job to AI, but you may lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI. So what I say to everyone, do a little bit of understanding and download ChatGPT and play around with it a little bit and learn, and you will see the potential, not to replace human beings, but to enhance them and enhance their productivity through a very effective tool.
No doubt. I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions about AI. Really, it's been around for years.
Yes.
And really the way we're utilizing it is new, but it's not so much that it's going to replace people, as you said. It's more just, the way we reevaluate functions and functionalities and different processes. It's going to change the way we do things in that way.
Well, yeah, your ability, computers only helped you do mathematical calculations faster, but you still had to put your thought and your mental and EQ, the human element. Remember, computers are on-off, two-dimensional. Humans and the human mind is so multidimensional when you think about all the things, the emotions, everything that we put, our experience, our perspectives, that is what makes a difference. And we're a long way from AI replacing that.
As you said earlier, you've been here since 1997. You've seen a lot of change. You've seen a lot of ups and downs, both in St. Louis, nationally, and beyond. As you look at the business scene here in St. Louis, what do you appreciate most? Is there something, one or two things that really stand out as, this is uniquely St. Louis that we have here in our business scene? Anything that really stands out that you appreciate the most?
Well, again, St. Louis is you have to go back to 1904. You want to go back in history when St. Louis had the World's Fair. It was one of the fastest growing cities and had a lot of businesses which were, very, the Anheuser-Busch's, the May department stores, the McDonald's, all of those phenomenal companies, which are no longer on the scene here anymore. What I've really appreciated is St. Louis's ability in the startup community and the venture community. People do not realize that St. Louis has a vibrant small business and venture community, and people are moving here for that. So I respect that. I respect the people that are putting the foundation of that in place to allow St. Louis to be a place where young entrepreneurs will come to work. And that is why I'm optimistic also about the future of the city.
Ron, I feel like that's a great note to end on. I really appreciate you coming by and sharing some of your wisdom with our listeners. Thank you so much.
Appreciate being here. Thank you.
Hang tight. We'll be right back. This episode is supported by the Missouri History Museum. Thursday nights at the museum is a free series that takes place every week from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Missouri History Museum. These nights feature lectures, performances, pop-up activities, and galleries that are open late. On April 25th, TEDx St. Louis hosts a simulcast of TED Talks beaming from the TED 2024 event in Vancouver. Enjoy a happy hour with food and drink available for purchase beginning at 5 p.m. and watch the simulcast beginning at 6:30 p.m. Visit mohistory.org/Thursday-nights to learn more. Welcome back to the Biz STL podcast. Thanks again to Ron Kruszewski for joining us on this episode of the Biz STL podcast. It was great getting to know him a little bit beyond his work life, and I'll tell you what, his thoughts on the importance of investing in downtown really ring true. There are all sorts of initiatives and plans that are in the works to revive the heartbeat of the region, but without investment, belief, and really optimism in downtown's future, it'll be hard to get anywhere meaningful. So I really appreciated some of Ron's thoughts about how we all have a role to play. That'll do it for this episode of the Biz STL podcast. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues. And stay connected with us by subscribing to our Biz STL leadership newsletter at stlmag.com/newsletters and follow along on Instagram at St. Louis Mag. If you loved what you heard, show us some love by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you choose to listen. We really appreciate your support and can't wait to have you join us again. Episodes drop every other Sunday, and until then, I'm Mike Miller. See you next time.